My name's Vern Bissell. Yep, that's me in the pictures during my time at Pepperdine, and my wife-to-be Judy is in the photos also, along with the 1960 Pontiac Bonneville we used to move from Normandy Village at the old downtown Los Angeles Pepperdine campus to the University of Maryland in 1967. What is the concern? Education at many Christian colleges and universities has been in the last few decades rapidly abandoning the Bible's Genesis record of creation, the fall of man, the flood, and the Babel dispersion. What is really ironic is that in these same last few decades, true scientific observational data have increasingly come in on the side of a literal reading of Genesis. That is what brings this conversation back to Pepperdine University, because our alma mater has been right in the middle of the crowd that seems to be trampling on each other in the rush to trample on Moses. First, on the positive side, in the last few decades, many advances in observational, that is true, modern science, confirm the Bible record of origins and the flood. Here are just 7 thumbnail examples. Number 1, genetic entropy makes it clear that the human genome is running down in thousands of years, not winding up into Superman in millions of years. Number 2, in 2004, the renowned journal Nature reported that our most recent common ancestor was only several thousand years ago. Number 3, similar to the Nature report, the mitochondrial DNA biomolecular clock has finally been calibrated with real data. Exactly as biblical creationists have been predicting for a few decades, the real science, summarized in April 2014, is telling us that the first man and woman likely lived less than 10,000 years ago. The result was the same for fruit flies, water fleas, and roundworms. Number 4, original tissue fossils with fresh tissue that is not fully mineralized with identifiable proteins have been found around the world, telling us those famous dinosaurs were likely buried during Noah's flood only thousands of years ago, not 63 million years ago. Number 5, the development of high-precision accelerator mass spectrometry has given 21st century man a way to measure carbon-14 content with great accuracy. Result? Analyzed coal deposits and diamonds were laid down in much less than 100,000 years. Number 6, the popular genetics computer model Mendel's accountant has been developed by creationists. Results simply confirm what the Bible has said all along. Life began in the recent past and genetically is running down, not up. Mendel's accountant also provides great science project opportunities for teens. Number 7, more and more evidence of Noah's flood is found around the world and correlated with the Genesis record. But there's some evidence that has been right in front of our eyes all along. For example, evidence of the violent tectonics related to Noah's flood can be seen on the Pepperdine University campus in Malibu, California. Look at the broken, sloping, rocky hillside between the administration building parking lot and the president's home up behind the flagpole. And now, number 8, let's add the 1987 discovery in China of the sacred tree of Sanxingdui. This bronze sculpture, clearly representing Eden's historical tree of knowledge of good and evil, was likely cast more than 4,000 years ago. The Genesis record of the fall of man is often twisted by so-called scholars. Here is the fall of man presented in untwistable bronze, 4,000 years old. Now, on the negative side, even with this growing list of evidences supporting the Bible record, many Christian theologians are abandoning the Genesis record of creation, the fall, and the flood. You may say, what are you talking about? I don't see that. But here are only 7 among uncountable observations of this modern era falling away from Scripture. Number 1, in October 2014, a Jewish Christian leader in Jerusalem told me, it seems in recent days it will be the Jews who will defend Jesus from Christian theologians. Number 2, Dr. Albert Mohler, a highly respected theologian and president of the Southern Baptist Theological Seminary, wrote way back in 2011, there can be no question but that the authority of the Bible and the truthfulness of the gospel are now clearly at stake. The New Testament clearly establishes the gospel of Jesus Christ upon the foundation of the Bible's account of creation. If there was no historical Adam and no historical fall, the gospel is no longer understood in biblical terms. So says Dr. Albert Mohler. Number 3, in the Catholic Church, a March 2009 Vatican Conference on Creation and Evolution was partially funded by the pantheistic John Templeton Foundation. Only evolutionary presenters were invited. When one doctor from Turkey, in the question and answer, mentioned that evolution demands transitional forms and asks why they aren't there, the microphone was yanked from in front of him. Someone nearby said, only evolutionists can ask questions.
Transitional force. Transitional force. Sir, yes, this is your question. Yes, I have a question. to see the end of the transaction. Very good. Yes. I understand that. I can ask a question. Short transitional basis. And can you read it? Can you read it? Can you expose it? The final is the Professor Auleta asked me to do. He raised a question of what do I see as the most interesting issues in evolutionary biology today. The responses I have to give is obviously going to be a very personal one. What issues do you guys see as interesting today? I don't understand as much as you know.
Number 4, a similar conference titled Why Darwin Still Matters in November 2009 was held at my alma mater, Pepperdine University in Malibu, California, again with major funding support from the New Age pantheistic Templeton Foundation. And again, the same pattern of exclusivity is repeated. Only theistic evolutionists and anti-theist evolutionists were invited. Biblical creationists were specifically not invited. If you are or were a Pepperdine student, or maybe a parent investing in your child's education at Pepperdine, does this seem like the way honest and open, fair-minded Christian education should be conducted? Number 5. In Los Angeles, Fuller Seminary Magazine, spring 2013 guest writer Dr. Carl Geibert, and by her silent non-protestation, let's include Fuller Professor Nancy Murphy, celebrated, quote, the discovery of elegant transitional forms like ambulocetus, unquote. All the while these academicians are blissfully unaware or blissfully in denial of the recorded fact that the walking whale, ambulocetus, and its concocted cousins Pakicetus and Rhodhocetus were prepared with academic fraud and promoted with yet more fraud. Also interesting is the fact that Dr. Geibert is highly connected with the BioLogos organization. Hiding behind a veneer of respectability, BioLogos was founded in 2007 primarily to evangelize Christians to accept theistic evolution and launched with substantial funding from the New Age, pantheistic, and Unity Church-connected John Templeton Foundation. Are your students hearing this in their Christian education? Are your adults hearing this as they make decisions for their young men and women of the next generation? Number 6. A 2014 BioLogos meeting of the Harvard Club downtown Manhattan was organized with apparently not a single biblical creationist invited participant. Religion reporter Warren Cole Smith wrote, I came away from the conference wondering why BioLogos excludes its most prominent critics from the dialogue. Doesn't the scientific method include presenting theories to skeptics so the theories can be confirmed, refuted, or made better? Unquote. So, are your students hearing about this institutional censoring and bias in their Christian education? Number 7, back at Malibu, California, the 2014 Pepperdine Bible Lectures had an embarrassingly one-sided sequence on faith and science, including presentations by Pepperdine religion professors Chris Duran and Chris Hurd, and by biology professor Rodney Honeycutt. Following is just one example among many deep flaws in the faith science lecture series. Both professors Duran and Honeycutt cited the land animal to whale transition, that is the walking whale idea, as a stellar example of fossil evidence for macroevolution. As tenured Christian educators, how could they not be aware of the fraud used to perpetrate the big whopper walking whale story? The fraud was well reported in creationist literature in 2007, then thoroughly in early April 2014. Is it common for Christian educators to listen only to God haters and compromisers while completely ignoring faithful, well-credentialed Christian brothers and sisters? I suspect Jesus would have some sharp words about that. Now, quickly, 2 audio clips from the Pepperdine 2014 Bible Lectures. First is Pepperdine theology professor Chris Duran, organizer of the 2009 Darwin Conference and organizer of the 2014 Bible Lectures Faith Science Sequence.
Meaning and purpose are philosophical and theological conundrums that have faced humankind for 40 or 50,000 years. As soon as we started looking up into the sky and had metaphors and symbols to be able to talk about the divine, we started asking those sorts of questions.
Without additional comment, may I just note that Professor Duran seems to be quoting from the Book of Darwin, but most certainly not from the Book of God. Again from the Pepperdine 2014 Bible Lectures, here is a 55-second clip. Pepperdine Old Testament scholar Chris Hurd was explaining why man, being made in the image of God, was not such a big deal outside of Genesis. Clint Loveness, in a question, tried to suggest that the affirmation of Moses by Jesus was important. Dr. Hurd proceeded with an unseemly interruption and put down. Here it is.
If that's what Jesus is thinking, it's all implicit behind the scenes, okay? And that's it. That's the sum total of biblical language about humanity bearing the image of God. 5 or 6 passages. 9 if you're in a Catholic Bible.
Can I ask a question?
If it's real fast.
There's a verse when Jesus says, if you don't believe Moses or the prophets, then you don't believe...
Has nothing to do with the image of God. I'm going on.
Okay.
My analysis of that, if one begins with the authority of Jesus, Clint's question was precisely the correct question to ask. The theology faculty member gave a precisely incorrect answer, that it did not matter what Jesus said in affirming Moses. Besides noting Dr. Hurd's brusque response, I was also taken aback at the laughter from the audience. It seems gasps would have shown more scriptural discernment. In the months following the 2014 Bible Lectures, the university administration was petitioned by concerned people around the country to give a fair hearing in the next year, 2015, to allow factual, scientific support and biblical support for straightforward reading of Genesis. But the whole idea of a balanced hearing in the 2015 Bible Lectures was completely rejected by the Pepperdine administration, even after being informed, September 2014, that the fraudulent whale evolution had been taught to students at the campus and promoted at the Bible Lecture.